Hello, folks. Time to get you an update on the Delphi case. The toolmark expert testified. And would I go as far as saying she faked the evidence? Yeah. I actually am. I make the claim here for you that this toolmark expert or firearm examiner, Melissa Oberg, faked the evidence against Mr. Allen. And I'm going to tell you how right now. So what happened? According to the information through people who've been in the courtroom, she testified, this firearms examiner, toolmark expert, so to say, that they had Rick Allen's gun. They have the unspent casing bullet, well, the entirety. Claims it was cycled through the gun. Okay, so far, so good. In order to recreate that, in order to do the comparison, she cycled through a few rounds. And then it was, as she apparently testified, the markings on the casings weren't strong enough. That, folks, should have been the end of her testing. If the claim is that was just, cha-ching, that's all that happened to the bullet in the ground, then that is the extent of your testing. And if you rule that there's not enough markings to make a comparison, that's the end of it. Did she end there? No. She fired 4 rounds to make new comparisons. Already there, that is my claim of faking evidence, because now she has gone beyond what happened to the bullet in the ground. Way beyond. And the reason why I say this is it's such a huge difference between just a cycled round and a fired round. First of all, the force of the ejection is multitudes higher. So that in itself would create markings that should not be applied to the unspent one. On top of that, you have in an unspent, you have the primer and the bullet holding, pressure from inside out when you do the cycle. There's nothing there. When you fire it, it's just an empty shell. So there's a clear difference there altogether. And then you have the heat. That for you guys or girls who have ever been on a shooting range, those things are hot as hell. And the difference in temperature on the shell, that's huge, because it transforms the metal in itself. Yes, and then folk might say, "Oh, but you can recycle a shell." Yeah, but not too many times, because the metal change, the structure of the metal change with heat. Have you ever seen Forged in Fire when you clench in oil? Yeah, because if you heat up and cool down, things change in metal. So with all this combined, you cannot make the comparison with an unspent with a fired. It's not even apples and oranges anymore. It's apples and tree trunks. I'm dumbfounded that this is still allowed in US courts. This absolute pretend science that is toolmark analysis. Especially in this case, when they don't even compare an unspent with an unspent. If she did the comparison, unspent with unspent, there would be no match. Because as apparently she testified, the markings weren't good enough. Okay. And now she apparently testified that, when she could, I don't know the wordings. I have to wait for the transcript to show up. It's how she words the so-called match. Because if she can conclusory match this to Mr. Allen's gun, then I am saying to you guys, she's lying. She might not knowingly be lying. Why is that? Because it's not the same situation between it's an unspent and a fired one. There is no possibility for it to be a match. And if she claims there is a match, it is because she made it up. Which goes back to toolmark analysis. It's not an objective science, folks. It is her opinion. Looking at these two completely different situations, unspent, spent. And if she finds a match there, you can't, because and on top of that, they did try comparing with, apparently, which is a slight improvement, with other Sig Sauers. And I'm not also there. I only know from the reporting of this case that she couldn't absolutely exclude the other guns. Well, folks, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot definitely say that's the gun and then turn around and say, but there's a slight possibility it could be those as well. That in itself is beyond the reasonable doubt standard. If you can't exclude them, then that can't be an absolute match. It's self-explanatory at this point. But yeah, it's infuriating for me to see this pretend science still being used in US courts, especially when you have unethical examiners like Melissa Oberg, who, in order to make a match, changes the situation. Had she had an unspent bullet there and compared it with the unspent bullet and let that be, okay. But she didn't. She went far beyond the scope of what her testing should have been. Had she stayed at, well, I did the testing with an unspent and an unspent, and I couldn't get results. That should have been the end of it. But she wasn't satisfied. She had to, and this is the subconscious bias of these toolmark experts. They want to make a match, in my opinion. So they find a way to make a match. In this case, comparing the unspent with a fired one. That's not good, folks. That's not good enough for the state to try to put a man in prison. And folks, without any DNA, without an actual matching bullet, which I claim it isn't, without the witnesses actually placing him at the scene, without actual cell tower, there's not even a basis for them to have him arrested, to search his home, anything. There's nothing there, folks. as I claim, with the so-called confessions. 61 different kinds of confessions, including but not limited to shooting the girls in the back and murdering his own family. Folks, this isn't right. It was never right, because this tells me the investigation was so flawed that there is a strong possibility that the guy or guys that actually killed Libby and Abby are still out there. Maybe they are looking at your kids for next time. All right, that is what I had for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up and everything. And yeah, folks, hug your family. Well, unless your family's crap, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. And I will see you in the next video or stream. All right, bye-bye.